He was born in Russia, emigrated to Canada with his parents at the age of 6, and had already mastered multiple languages, mathematics, and engineering by the time he got to high school. At age 17, his father introduced him to Bitcoin. He couldn't afford to buy it, so he wrote about it instead. And while he found Bitcoin fascinating, he felt like he had an even better idea. In 2013, Vitalik Buterin wrote the original white paper that conceived Ethereum. Not just a digital currency, but an entire network built on the blockchain. It's now worth more than $300 billion, and the biggest believers claim it will send the rest of the cryptocurrency market into the ether. Joining me on this edition of Bloomberg Studio 1.0, the inventor of Ethereum, Vitalik Buterin.
We're going to talk about Ethereum, but I want to start first with how you got here. You were born in Russia, you emigrated to Canada with your parents when you were just 6 years old, and you started learning about Bitcoin from your father. What is it about Bitcoin that hooked you both?
Bitcoin is really interesting because of how interdisciplinary it is. I was very interested in math and computer programming and cryptography and technology. I was also very interested in economics and kind of politics and philosophy. And Bitcoin just happens to be this interesting fusion of all of these things, right? And at the same time, it's not just a piece of code that's there for fun. It's not even just an app. It's something that's really intended to have a very big and meaningful impact on how the world works. And so I think just having both of those aspects together definitely made Bitcoin very interesting to both me and my dad.
As I understand it, you didn't have enough money to mine, so you wrote about it instead. And in 2013, you wrote the original white paper that became the basis for Ethereum. What was it that sparked that original vision?
So I joined the Bitcoin space in early 2011, and I wrote that Ethereum white paper at the end of 2013. That was the time when things first blew up, and it was clear that this was something that's significant, right? I remember going to the Bitcoin conference in San Jose, which had about 1,000 people in it, and that was when I realized that hey, this isn't just a bunch of weirdos who only exist on the internet. This is real. There's people trying to actually do things. There's people building businesses, a lot of which are actually pretty successful. What started happening then was people started thinking, well, we have Bitcoin, what next, right? So what else can you do with blockchains? What would Bitcoin 2.0 or cryptocurrency 2.0 look like?
As I understand it, it wants to be a whole new operating system, like a new Apple iOS, with a ton of apps built on top of the blockchain. In the simplest terms, what is Ethereum and how is it different from Bitcoin?
So Bitcoin is a blockchain that's designed for one application, right? Which is maintaining and letting people use Bitcoin, the currency. Ethereum is a general purpose blockchain. So instead of being a blockchain that's designed for one application, Ethereum is a blockchain that supports a built-in programming language, and whatever blockchain application you want to build, you can just write the logic of that application in the programming language, upload that program to the chain, and this becomes what we call a smart contract. And anyone can then interact with your application, and the blockchain interprets the rules of your application for you. So instead of being something that's designed to do one thing, it's designed to open up space for creativity to basically let people do whatever thing that they want to do on top of it.
So is the idea then that the next Facebook or Twitter would not be owned by Jack Dorsey or Mark Zuckerberg, but be built on the blockchain and owned by everyone?
There are multiple projects already trying to do that, and lots of them are based on Ethereum, so yes.
So then is Ethereum a threat to established, centralized companies and social networks like Facebook, like Twitter, like Google?
I think it can be a threat, but it can also be an opportunity. I think even Jack Dorsey himself, right, he has this project called Blue Sky, which is trying to figure out how Twitter can kind of incorporate decentralized elements. And I think a lot of these projects want to actually do this, right? Because I think a lot of them are realizing that being a kind of centralized focus of power and having control and of so much of everyone's data and all of these things, like it's not just an asset, it can also be a liability as well.
Now, we still don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto is, whether that's even a single person or a group of people. What is it like to be a known and visible figure behind such a popular technology?
I mean, there's definitely times when I want to be less visible, but I guess that comes with the territory.
Why do you want to be less visible? I mean, one of the other Ethereum co-founders, Anthony DeLorean, recently announced he's quitting crypto because of safety concerns. I mean, is that part of your concern as well?
I mean, it's not so much physical safety per se as just like wanting the ability to also, have a life and not just have like random people running up and saying, "Are you the Vitalik Buterin?" I don't know. There's definitely times when I find such things annoying, and so I don't know. I'm likely to keep wearing my mask in lots of places, and that has nothing to do with COVID.
There was a lot of debate early on about what Ethereum could be, would be, should be, for-profit, non-profit. Non-profit won out, and I know that that was really important to you. Why did you want Ethereum to be a nonprofit, and how did you come to that decision?
It was just very important to me that this is a technology that decentralized infrastructure that's meant to be not controlled and not owned by anyone. And it's a platform that's for the world. And so for that platform to be connected to a company that had a very small number of shareholders, I think is something that could really centralize the ecosystem, and so something that I thought would be very unhealthy and wanted to really avoid.
Now, NFTs in particular have really helped bring new users into the crypto tent. We saw you at Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis's kitchen table.
What's Ethereum?
You also were not happy about Kim Kardashian getting involved, and I'm curious, where do you draw the line when it comes to celebrity endorsement?
The thing that I was unhappy with about Kim Kardashian was that she basically shilled something like Ethereum Max that was I'd call it a borderline scam, right? It seems like this project that's basically just at best a pure money grab that's not really providing much of value.
Ethereum has had some growing pains. Why do these problems exist?
This entire ecosystem has blown up and gotten big fairly quickly.
Ethereum has had some growing pains, whether it is high transaction costs, traffic jams, front running. Why do these problems exist?
This is the scalability problem. Everyone's been talking about the scalability problem for at least 5 years now. And basically it's like a simple supply and demand problem, right? Like if the number of people who want to send transactions goes up, but the amount of space for transactions on chain doesn't go up, then all of these people who want to send transactions are bidding against each other, and only the ones that are willing to pay a really high amount can actually get in. The only way to solve this is to just improve the technology to increase the number of transactions that the system can process. And it's why we've been doing just all kinds of incremental improvements to the blockchain clients and the protocol and the code over the last 5 years. Ethereum scalability has increased by about a factor of 5 since the project started. And then there are some problems that are not just scaling problems per se, but they're still technology problems, right? There are problems that have to do with the fact that this entire ecosystem has blown up and gotten big fairly quickly. There's a lot of aspects of it where people are still trying to understand what is the correct way and what is the safest way to do these things. Right? For example, the state of just security auditing for blockchain protocols. It has gotten much better since the DAO hack back in 2016. right? But, at the same time, challenges continue to exist, and that's normal in any space when, you have, usage growing faster and then the technology catches up.
Can you contrast proof of stake with proof of work? Why do you think that's so much better?
The reason why blockchains need to have proof of something, right, is because these are decentralized systems. So, for example, in proof of work, the system actually measures how much computing power is being put into each block, and so in order for an attacker to take over the network, they actually have to have more computing power than the rest of the network combined, right? So you can't just spin up a billion virtual machines on one computer, but the problem is that it requires a huge number of computers to be constantly running 24/7. So it works, but it's very expensive. Proof of stake, it works differently, right? So proof of stake works by instead using coins as the economic resource. So if you have coins inside of the system, then you just sign messages with those coins. And for an attacker to take over, they have to basically have more coins than the rest of the network put together. So it does the same thing, but it avoids the need to have these computers running 24/7, and that's where the efficiency comes from.
You're planning major upgrades, meantime, and ETH 2.0 is well underway. What will that accomplish? What problems will it solve?
So I think what people call ETH 2.0 has two big parts, right? One big part is the switch to proof of stake. So after a full transition to proof of stake, there will not be any more mining. Ethereum's energy consumption will go down by a factor of more than 1,000. So it'll go from being a big problem to basically not a problem at all. And the chain will become more secure, it'll become more efficient. So after that, the next major milestone is what's called the merge, which is when basically the proof of work chain just stops running and all of the applications on the proof of work chain get moved over to the proof of stake chain and continue running inside of the proof of stake chain from there.
Now, while you're working on all of this, Ethereum has developed an unseemly reputation as a fertile ground for scams. And I wonder how concerned you are about a crackdown like we saw with ICOs. What are the longer term consequences?
There's definitely going to be crackdowns on things happening on blockchains, just like there's crackdowns on things happening on the internet. I do think that the state of the industry and the state of things is improving. But if you just compare it to the way that the space was 5 or 8 years ago, right? 2014, remember, Mt. Gox just collapsed and $500 million disappeared. And I think we still don't know where most of it is. And things do continue to happen from time to time, but just as a fraction of the scale of the space, I do think that it keeps getting smaller and smaller. One big consequence, of course, is that mining is moving out of China, which, there's definitely a silver lining there in terms of decentralization, in that you don't have as much hash power located in one country anymore. But at the same time, the mining farms there were, real companies with real employees and real people. Some degree of regulatory action is happening, but it's not looking like, anything close to, the level of say what people feared 10 years ago.
There's concerns about Russia being behind a spate of cyber attacks and cryptocurrency being used as a tool of extortion. How do you think about the intersection of crypto and cyber warfare?
To me, I think that this is a temporary phase. I think what's happened is that just even the internet as a whole, it grew a huge amount over the last 20 years. And for most of that 20 years, people just did not take security seriously. It's even the wrong thing to be doing, to be trying to blame attackers. Ultimately, the things that's at fault is the fact that there are these excellent tools within cryptography and within, the technology behind cryptocurrency itself that allow you to be much more secure against these kinds of things. And my personal hope is that people at least see the level of attacks that are happening now as a wake-up call, and that we get a massive effort to just improve the level of security across every industry and across the world. Because if that doesn't happen, right, then it's not It's not even ransomware attackers or that are going to be a problem. Like it's at some point, whenever the first like full scale cyber war happens, if people are not prepared, it's something that could end up, being something really bad for the world.
Whether Bitcoin, Ethereum, or the blockchain really are changing the world seems to be an ongoing debate. Is crypto the future, or is it a fad?
I think it's the future that contains fads.
Right now, it is mostly finance apps that are built on Ethereum, aside from NFTs. And I'm wondering, what is the killer app for Ethereum that could lead to widespread adoption, much like email was for the internet?
I think there's a few candidates. DeFi is obviously one of them. I think the blockchain-based financial things have always been attractive because the traditional financial system just sucks more than traditional centralized tech, right? Like, if I send an email to, someone in Guatemala, then they're going to receive it in 1 second. With finance, you can't even say that. A lot of people and companies, even today, just use cryptocurrency to send money internationally. Outside of finance, think one interesting area where I think blockchains might go. You notice that in order to access your assets in Ethereum, you need to have an account. We're getting to the point where there's a lot of work that's been done on making these accounts very secure. And so instead of just being accounts that hold money, like these turn into like fully blown profiles, right? And once you have profiles, then you can start doing decentralized social media on top of that. The social and financial things that you can do with that, like even working together, is something that I think could be really big.
Now, whether Bitcoin, Ethereum, or the blockchain really are changing the world seems to be an ongoing debate. Is crypto the future, or is it a fad?
I think it's the future that contains fads, much like the internet was the future and the internet contained fads. There's definitely specific kinds of applications that do get overhyped from time to time, like ICOs back in 2017, and then certain kinds of DeFi right now. But at the same time, there's other DeFi projects that really are valuable. There's a combination of both, right? And figuring out which is maybe it's something that's difficult to see ahead of time, and it's something that we as an ecosystem are going to find out.
So the crypto skeptics, many people that are admired in the financial world, Jamie Dimon, Warren Buffett, are they just wrong?
A lot of them have definitely been just wrong already, right? They expected even back in 2013 to 15, at least some of them, to see blockchains and cryptocurrency fail and go down to zero in price and just not get any more interest completely. And even today, they've already been far more successful than any of them expected. So I can see how people in traditional finance, or at least some of them, can be inclined to kind of not see the value of blockchain-based finance immediately. There's a lot of people, even in traditional banks, that see the value that blockchains provide and have been trying to come up with things and work with them.
One of them is Jack Dorsey. Jack Dorsey recently announced Square is creating a new business focused on decentralized financial services based on Bitcoin, using Bitcoin. What have you learned about Jack Dorsey's plans? Does it seem like he's building something that sounds a lot like Ethereum?
I'm skeptical about these decentralized finance on top of Bitcoin type of projects. Basically because the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? This is that on Ethereum, there's native functionality that allows you to essentially directly put either ETH or Ethereum-based assets into these smart contracts, into these lockboxes, where there's then arbitrary conditions of any kind that can then govern how those assets get released. Bitcoin does not have that functionality to the same extent. Jack is basically going to have to essentially create his own system that enforces those rules. And then on the Bitcoin layer, the Bitcoins will just have to be owned by probably a multi-sig wallet controlled by either Jack or the participants in the system. It looks similar, but it'll end up being something with a much weaker trust model, Right, like I really think that like this is the whole reason why Ethereum started as an independent system in the first place, right? Like there's technical limits to your ability to kind of graft new functionality onto a system that's not powerful enough to support that new functionality.
Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg is also making some big moves behind the metaverse. And what do you make of them wading into this decentralized world? Could they replicate some of the same problems that we see in Facebook and Twitter today?
I think Mark is clearly trying to figure out what the next stage after the internet is and like actually get into it and create it. But before the rest of the world goes in some different direction, and Facebook is sort of left in the dust and becomes one of these kind of previous generation old world companies. So we've seen Facebook try to get into the crypto space with Libra, though. I think in the end, like Libra did end up being possibly the wrong approach, because like the problem that someone like Facebook has, right, is that a lot of people mistrust them. And so building their own platform, like I know they tried really hard to create something that's a consortium with all these different industry participants, but at the same, like even that was not enough, right? And there's just a huge amount of mistrust of them. But with the metaverse, I guess the thing that happened during the pandemic is that we've basically very quickly switched from a world where the physical world was people's kind of primary center of experience, and the internet was this new add-on, to a world where the internet really is the center of people's experiences. And so we basically are spending most of our time in a virtual world. And the question is just like, what level of quality does that virtual world have?
So Ethereum in 5 years and 10 years, where is it?
Hopefully running the metaverse, but I guess we'll see how it goes.
You've got a lot of people out there, a lot of people who are trying to understand cryptocurrency, who are placing their bets. What's your prediction for Bitcoin? Does it replace the dollar? Does it exist in 50 years, or is it something else? And then similarly, what's your prediction for Ethereum? Because a lot of investors are choosing to hold both, or one or the other.
Yeah, I think replacing the dollar completely is unlikely, just because like there's things that the dollar provides, like price stability, for example, that Bitcoin is not going to provide. Like I think even in a theoretical world where the US dollar collapses, like even then, I think Bitcoin is not going to be able to provide the level of stability that users and businesses expect to be able to set prices in. And in that kind of world, look, we would need something else. Like it could be decentralized stable coins, it could be something else, but we'll see. But at the same time, I think cryptocurrency can still have a very powerful and important role alongside existing currencies.
Ethereum seems to have this reputation of being a community of creative engineering types who like rainbows and cats and mythical creatures. I know you have some fun t-shirts yourself. Is that a fair depiction of the community?
The community is a diverse place, and it has many different kinds of people, and it definitely has its fair share of cat people and dog people and unicorn people as well, and I think that's awesome. And I think it's really healthy to not take yourself too seriously, and that's definitely something that the Ethereum community strives to do. Remember that the world is supposed to be a place to have fun too.
All right. Vitalik Buterin, inventor of Ethereum, thank you so much for joining us.